Episode 56. Jem's eyes flashed at Aunt Alexandra, but he said to Dill, "Let's go. You can take that plate with you." When we went to the front porch, Miss Stephanie Crawford was busy telling it to Miss Maudie Atkinson and to Mr. Avery. They looked around at us and went on talking. Jem made a feral noise in his throat. I wished for a weapon.
"I hate grown folks looking at you," said Dill. "Makes you feel like you done something."
Miss Maudie yelled for Jem Finch to come there. Jem groaned and heaved himself up from the swing.
"We'll go with you," Dill said.
Miss Stephanie's nose quivered with curiosity. She wanted to know who all gave us permission to go to court. She didn't see us, but it was all over town this morning that we were in the colored balcony. Did Atticus put us up there as a sort of... Wasn't it right close up there with all those... Did Scout understand all the... Didn't it make us mad to see our daddy beat? "Hush, Stephanie." Miss Maudie's diction was deadly. "I've not got all the morning to pass on the porch. Jem Finch, I called to find out if you and your colleagues can eat some cake. Got up at 5 to make it, so you'd better say yes. Excuse us, Stephanie. Good morning, Mr. Avery." There was a big cake and 2 little ones on Miss Maudie's kitchen table. There should have been 3 little ones. It was not like Miss Maudie to forget Dill, and we must have shown it. But we understood when she cut from the big cake and gave the slice to Jem. As we ate, we sensed that this was Miss Maudie's way of saying that as far as she was concerned, nothing had changed. She sat quietly in a kitchen chair, watching us. Suddenly she spoke. "Don't fret, Jem. Things are never as bad as they seem." Indoors, when Miss Maudie wanted to say something lengthy, she spread her fingers on her knees and settled her bridge work. This she did, and we waited. "I simply want to tell you that there are some men in this world who were born to do our unpleasant jobs for us. Your father's one of them." "Oh," said Jem. "Well." "Don't you well me, sir," Miss Maudie replied, recognizing Jem's fatalistic noises. "You're not old enough to appreciate what I said." Jem was staring at his half-eaten cake. "It's like being a caterpillar in a cocoon, that's what it is," he said. "Like something sleeping wrapped up in a warm place. I always thought Maycomb folks were the best folks in the world. At least that's what they seemed like." "We're the safest folks in the world," said Miss Maudie. "We're so rarely called on to be Christians, but when we are, we've got men like Atticus to go for us." Jem grinned ruefully. "Wish the rest of the county thought that." "You'd be surprised how many of us do." "Who?" Jem's voice rose. "Who in this town did one thing to help Tom Robinson? Just who?" "His colored friends, for one thing, and people like us. People like Judge Taylor, people like Mr. Heck Tate. Stop eating and start thinking, Jem. Did it ever strike you that Judge Taylor naming Atticus to defend that boy was no accident? That Judge Taylor might have had his reasons for naming him?" This was a thought. Court-appointed defenses were usually given to Maxwell Green, Maycomb's latest addition to the bar, who needed the experience. Maxwell Green should have had Tom Robinson's case. "You think about that," Miss Maudie was saying. "It was no accident. I was sitting there on the porch last night, waiting. I waited and waited to see you all come down the sidewalk, and as I waited, I thought, Atticus Finch can't win. He can't win, but he's the only man in these parts who can keep a jury out so long in a case like that. And I thought to myself, well, we're making a step. It's just a baby step, but it's a step." "It's all right to talk like that. Can't any Christian judges and lawyers make up for heathen juries?" Jem muttered. "Soon as I get grown, that's something you'll have to take up with your father," Miss Maudie said. We went down Miss Maudie's cool new steps into the sunshine and found Mr. Avery and Miss Stephanie Crawford still at it. They had moved down the sidewalk and were standing in front of Miss Stephanie's house. Miss Rachel was walking toward them.
"I think I'll be a clown when I get grown," said Dill.
Jem and I stopped in our tracks.
"Yes, sir, a clown," he said. "There ain't one thing in the world I can do about folks except laugh, so I'm going to join the circus and laugh my head off."
"You got it backwards, Dill," said Jem. "Clowns are sad. It's folks that laugh at them."
"Well, I'm going to be a new kind of clown. I'm going to stand in the middle of the ring and laugh at the folks. Just look yonder," he pointed. "Every one of 'em ought to be riding broomsticks. And Rachel already does."
Miss Stephanie and Miss Rachel were waving wildly at us in a way that did not give the lie to Dill's observation. "Oh, gosh," breathed Jem. "I reckon it'd be ugly not to see 'em." Something was wrong. Mr. Avery was red in the face from a sneezing spell and nearly blew us off the sidewalk when we came up. Miss Stephanie was trembling with excitement, and Miss Rachel caught Dill's shoulder.
"You get on in the backyard and stay there," she said. "There's danger a-coming."
"'Smatter?" I asked. "Ain't you heard yet? It's all over town." At that moment, Aunt Alexandra came to the door and called us, but she was too late. It was Miss Stephanie's pleasure to tell us. This morning, Mr. Bob Ewell stopped Atticus on the post office corner, spat in his face, and told him he'd get him if it took the rest of his life. "I wish Bob Ewell wouldn't chew tobacco," was all Atticus said about it. According to Miss Stephanie Crawford, however, Atticus was leaving the post office when Mr. Ewell approached him, cursed him, spat on him, and threatened to kill him. Miss Stephanie, who, by the time she had told it twice, was there and had seen it all, passing by from Jitney Jungle she was. Miss Stephanie said Atticus didn't bat an eye, just took out his handkerchief and wiped his face and stood there and let Mr. Ewell call him names wild horses could not bring her to repeat. Mr. Ewell was a veteran of an obscure war. That, plus Atticus's peaceful reaction, probably prompted him to inquire,
"Too proud to fight, you nigger-loving bastard?"
Miss Stephanie said Atticus said, "No, too old," put his hands in his pockets, and strolled on. Miss Stephanie said you had to hand it to Atticus Finch. He could be right dry sometimes. Jem and I didn't think it entertaining. "Well, after all, though," I said, "he was the deadest shot in the county one time. He could—"
"You know he wouldn't carry a gun, Scout. He ain't even got one," said Jem. "You know he didn't even have one down at the jail that night. He told me having a gun around's an invitation to somebody to shoot you."
"Well, this is different," I said. "We can ask him to borrow one." We did, and he said, "Nonsense." Dill was of the opinion that an appeal to Atticus's better nature might work. After all, we would starve if Mr. Ewell killed him. Besides, be raised exclusively by Aunt Alexandra, and we all knew the first thing she'd do before Atticus was under the ground would be to fire Calpurnia. Jem said it might work if I cried and flung a fit, being young and a girl. That didn't work either. But when he noticed us dragging around the neighborhood, not eating, taking little interest in our normal pursuits, Atticus discovered how deeply frightened we were. He tempted Jem with a new football magazine one night. When he saw Jem flip the pages and toss it aside, he said, "What's bothering you, son?" Jem came to the point.
"Mr. Ewell."
"What has happened?"
"Nothing's happened. We're scared for you, and we think you ought to do something about him."
Atticus smiled wryly. "Do what? Put him under a peace bond?"
"When a man says he's going to get you, looks like he means it."